Hello from Scottsdale, Arizona. My name's Todd Eden. I'm the founder of HCT, and I'm the developer of the WaterSOLV chemistry and WaterSOLV program. I don't take credit for everything because we learn from everyone. And so this is a light overview of the technology as a whole with a little bit getting deep. um, we can go a lot deeper. We have really backup of everything that we've done. We have all these things that we'll cover with you in the presentation, but this is kind of a front end view of what this program is all about. So let's get started. So we're pretty surprised after all these years of what we do that, believe it or not, we sit behind a desk and we look at data. We look at water, soil, and available nutrition data in a specific way, and we write prescriptions. And those prescriptions have proven successful, which I'm going to talk about. The way we accomplish this is through improved and more accurate data, through synergy in chemistry that's trade named WaterSOLV. And these chemistries are applied to water and soils to make them work effectively, efficiently, and the results wind up being optimum vegetation vitality. So plants love the water, love the health, love the available nutrition, they get everything they need, and they literally blow out of the ground. So we talk about the WaterSOLV program because it is a program. And we'll get into those details on exactly what we do. But the big picture about what we're doing is we're changing the availability of nutrients, the macro and micronutrients of water and in soil. We change the solubility and sustainability of those available nutrients when you add water. And so as long as there's moisture, then all these nutrients are in solution. They're not chelated. They're in solution so the plant can drink them with water. Very much like sodium. Sodium's highly soluble, goes into solution readily, yet things like calcium and iron don't. And so we make the calcium, the iron, and all of those macro and micronutrients available to the plant through multiple chemicals. And these chemicals are added at specific concentrations based on the conditions. So what really is noticed in testing is when they do tissue analyses and sap analyses and crop analyses, is that the volume of nutritional uptake is significant. So we're getting all of the nutrients, and the volume of nutrients is substantially greater, not percentages, but volume. And so this is pretty consistent through all forms of agronomy that we address, which is really anything that you're doing with water and soil and trying to grow something. So what we're doing is we're making healthy water, like cities make healthy water for you and I. We're making healthy water for not only of the water, but also through the soil, so that when the plant takes a drink, it's a healthy drink. And there's things that you're probably not familiar with, but normally you look at a water analysis, you look at the available nutrition analysis. They tell you what the exchangeables are and have you add more product to the exchangeables to create more available. Well, we're looking at those in a different way, but we're also looking at the biology. We're looking at the pore space. We're looking at infiltration rate and depth. So we're also looking at the biology and the physical properties of soil, because all these things need to come together in order for that crop to get a healthy, nutritionally rich drink when it drinks. When there's moisture available, that drink is loaded with everything that they can utilize and not the toxins. With our chemistry, we actually cause continuous oxygenation of the soil. So the antiseptic product that we have, when it degrades, when it's done its work, it leaves behind dissolved oxygen. So we're actually chemically oxygenating through the water into the soil, and that helps provide the oxygen that our plants need, which they commonly see when it rains. Rain will bring down good water, it'll bring down oxygen, It's not really flushing salts when it hits the ground. What it's doing, it's oxygenating nitrogen to nitrate. And so your plant gets this monster energy drink of nitrate and oxygen, and it literally grows fantastic. But then, a week later, 10 days later, everything seems to crash. And that's because the next available thing for it to drink is that highly soluble sodium. And it's harder to drink than the water, the oxygen, and the nitrate. And yet the calcium and the magnesium, potassium, phosphate, iron, all of those still sit in the soil. They're still there. They weren't liberated into that great drink. And so we're going to show you what we do to change that. We're probably the only chemical that I know of that literally detoxifies sodium and chloride, and that aggressively goes after what we would call bio waste or biomatter. So I can run 1,000 parts per million of sodium and chloride through a tissue of each in a tissue, and it'd be the best looking tissue, no chlorotic problems, and these plants would be producing the most amount of crop. So it's a direct sodium detoxification so that free sodium and that chloride doesn't damage tissue and cell wall growth. All of these things put together, we typically have substantially less water demand because we're getting water into the ground. We're reducing the evaporation. The amount of water that's reduced is significant. And then the efficiencies in what we do cause a lot less money to be spent. So aerifying, top dressing, watering, a lot of other agronomical practices that we do don't have to be done because we're able to maintain this healthy water and maintain these viable soils. So we have what's called a no ifs policy. And what that means is if we don't know, we're not going to say yes. We're going to tell you that we don't know. You're going to know that we don't know. The risk is not worth the reward. So, growers, you have one season on the golf course, you have, spring training, you've got a season for growing crops, and these are money events. And so we're not going to take the chance of doing something different unless we know it's not going to cause a problem, or unless we know what it's going to do. And so that's what we have. We have a no ifs policy. If we don't know, we'd be happy to do a beta test. We'd be happy to take it into the lab, and then we'll be happy to see if we can get empirical reproducible results on our findings. So I ran across this picture on the internet, and it was impossible. And it was kind of interesting. They're going to cut the M off and call it possible. Well, our biggest hurdle that we have faced year over year over year was believability. Skepticism falls in there too, but believability. And with the amount of clients that we have, and the comments that we get after they get into the program, what they see, their reply is unbelievable. This is just unbelievable. But when you add up what we do, if you look at it scientifically, biologically, chemically, physically, etc., it all adds up. It all makes sense. Why wouldn't it work? And then when you see it, you got to see it. An interesting little story was a PhD out of UC Davis who investigated our material. He's part of a growing group, and he also grows himself. And he went out and met with dealers. He went out and met with end users. He did research. He looked all over the world through the internet for all these research papers, etc. And he called me about a year later and said, "Man," he says, "the chemigation guy hooked it up wrong. He only fed half of our trees." And he goes, "Now I believe it." And I said, "Why do you believe it?" And he goes, "Because those trees are the best looking trees you could imagine, and the others aren't." So I got to see it. So here he has all the education, all the knowledge, did all the research, etc., but he didn't believe it till he saw it. And that's very typical, very, very typical. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we address that in technologies that we put together so that people can see it. And so it can be an easy way to evaluate the product, try the product, see what it does, and then that leads people into just buying into the program. So new solutions to age-old problems. And so over the past 6 years, we've been able to provide empirical, scientific, reproducible successes. And we do that at over 240 golf courses throughout the United States, border to border, coast to coast. We do that at literally millions of acres of agriculture, all types of irrigation from drip, overhead emitters, cooling spray systems, um, flood irrigation, dryland farming, all of those scenarios, different soil types, clays, loamy, sands, etc. And the problems they all face are similar. They're just different because of the soil and the environment, the amount of rain, the lack of rain, the lack of water, living on Mother Nature for water, etc. We've done we do hundreds of nurseries. I actually have nurseries that have been able to sell their RO systems to clean their water for their propagation, where they're using their canal water and our material, and they don't need to use the RO, and they get better propagation and better growth. And then we've done hundreds of water wells. So I write prescriptions for the rehabilitation of water wells, and most of my clients are people like Intel, Marathon Refinery, water utilities, cities, municipalities, etc. And so we're very successful in that business as well. And as I mentioned, we do this nationwide. So what's really new about what we do? Well, here's the overview. What we found was that water analyses are good. They don't always include everything they should, but they don't look at the bacteria of water. And so my go-to is, would you swim in the pond that you use to put out through your irrigation? And almost everybody says no, and you wonder why, and it's because it's septic. It's nasty. Well, we're transferring this, from the pond out into our soils. And bacteria love certain foods, and there's a lot of those foods in our soils. And when we don't have water moving, we don't have oxygen, then water tends to go septic. And I'm going to touch on that. So the testing methods of water we improve by adding the biology into it. We talk about hard water. Well, the hardness is, calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphate, and that's all fertilizer. The problem is that it doesn't stay that way. It doesn't stay available to the plant. The other big change is the WaterSOLV chemistry and the chemistry synergy, the use of the chemistries that we develop and how they're applied and why they're applied and what data is there that gives us the foundational principles on what we would be adding and how much and when. And then, typically when we get into a situation, our first job is, fix the water, but we got to make the water a better product to also fix the soils. And then once we get the soils fixed, then we can just worry about treating the water because we're able to sustain those soil properties. And then that comes to the intellectual knowledge. So when we can do the water testing, when we could do the soil testing, when we could do the available soil nutrition analysis testing, and we get those good results, now we have knowledge of how we're going to be able to treat those conditions, and we're going to be able to see them. We're going to be able to see how those nutrients have moved from the water through the soil to the plant, and how we've reduced those elements and micro and macro nutrients in the soil. And so that helps us define when we need to start replenishing those soils as well. And so what we're doing is we're doing water treatment, and through water treatment, we're doing soil remediation. And at the same time, we're going to sustain that soil through that soil operability, infiltration rate, etc., through the treatment of that water. And what happens? Your problems go away. And the amount of problems that go away are quite significant. So on the left here, we have kind of some of the big ones that we deal with all the time. And on the right, we have a whole list. So kind of keep track, and we add to it and add to it. So black layer, it's bacteria, it's sulfate producing bacteria. Algae, it's algae, and there aren't usually wetting agents or acids that will deal with it. Infiltration, what are we trying to clean? What are we trying to remove to restore that infiltration? The available oxygen or pore space in the soil, the amount of toxic sodium versus the available macro and micronutrients. People deal with particulate matter in sprinkler heads or in drip irrigation. In a lot of places, they deal with shells. Transition, that was a big deal. The transitions are nightmares. A lot of guys, are highly scrutinized over transition, so they do anything and everything they can to try and make that soil beneficial for transition. Standing water is a big issue in a lot of areas, and then chronic turf issues. We replace the sod and next year it dies. We replace the sod again, next year it dies. We're having to rebuild the greens, every 2 years. We have the money to do it, but why do we have to do it? Well, we have answers to all these. But there's some other really good ones in there. Just the other day, someone brought up, your fairy ring issues go away, and they do. Your annual biological water and piping issues, they go away. The amount of fungicides that you use, they go away. So lots of different things here. There's a long list. We provide this list to you because if you can walk into an organization and say, do you have any of these problems? I've got solutions for them. Go ahead and check the ones you have, and I'll tell you which product would solve that problem. So something to put into your mind is that soils are a filter, and we're putting out water, and a lot of the nutrients, we put out fertilizer, a lot of the fertilizer, these things get accumulated in this thing we call soil that is a filter. And the problem is that these filters get loaded up. And unfortunately, because we didn't really look at the filter as a whole, we looked at exchangeables available and added more of the nutrition to get it to the available. We were actually putting more nutritions on top of massive amounts of nutritions that were already accumulated in the soil. And so what happens in that case, then we're overwatering, we're trying to keep the soil hydrated, and typically water that's not moving, that doesn't have oxygen, that sits in dirt will turn septic. And so this is a picture of two different waters. The one on the left was this beautiful water, yet it was killing plants. And so when we did our analysis on it, just so happened that water was 10 to the 7th with bacteria. So here we were taking this beautiful looking water and putting it out on this soil, and the soil was loaded with biofood source, and the waste products of the bacteria were actually hindering the ability of the plant to get the nutrition it needed, including oxygen. The beaker on the right was actually taken out of a dead-end lake that is filled by reclaimed water and reclaimed water runoff. And the soils were as hard as concrete. You could not get a probe into the ground. And the bacteria test on this water, even though it was green, it was 0. And it was 0 because they oxygenated that water a lot. They had a whole bunch of bubblers in the water, and it was able to keep that bacteria down. So in that situation, bacteria wasn't really our problem. And the soils were so cemented that bacteria couldn't live in that environment either. But the problem was cementation. Excuse me. So bacteria plays an enormous role, and then having what we're using to deal with that bacteria leave behind dissolved oxygen is really priceless. And a lot of people would use the acid product, et cetera, and then they'd finally get talked into using the antiseptic, and they just said, wow, I just can't believe the difference. Well, it's that impressive. So there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, but the waste products of iron reducing bacteria, notice it's iron reducing, so it kind of loves iron, and it works with oxygen. And then there's the sulfate reducing bacteria, which we call black layer, and it's really bad. It produces acid, it produces toxic gas, it scavenges oxygen, and it produces water. So does iron reducing bacteria. It produces water. But let's think about this filter for a minute. So you replace the filter in your refrigerator water. Why? Because it gets plugged up. Okay. You replace your fuel filter. Why? I mean, it's fuel, it's a solvent. because it gets plugged up. You replace air filters in your home. Probably not much bacteria, but there is bacteria, and I'll explain why. Um, but take a look at your swimming pool. It's made out of plaster or fiberglass. It's chlorinated. It's pH adjusted. You shut it off for a while, for a few days, warm temperature, and let it be stagnant, and you'll get more algae and bacteria grow in the pool, and then you got to fix it. And so, what are you going to do to fix it? Well, you got to turn the pump on, circulate the water, shock it, pH adjusted. You got to brush that bacteria off the walls. You got to backwash that matter out of the filter, which is what? Sand, or it's diatomaceous earth plates, and you got to get that bacteria out of there. And if there's phosphate in there, you got to dilute and reduce the phosphate that's in there because it's food source for bacteria. We'll relate that to our soils, and our soil pool is made out of dirt, and it's got phosphate, sulfate, sulfur, iron, manganese, calcium, potassium. It's got everything there that wants to make that water support bacteria, that provides bacteria everything it needs in order to cause us problems. So that's just the real world. So hopefully it's starting to add up for you. So growers are fighting the fight. Agronomy is, a lot of these methods and technologies are, excuse me, but from my perspective, they're band-aids. I'm sorry to say, air injection, fracking, tilling, breaking up the ground to get water in. That's not making available nutrition. Okay. Sure, it can add some attributes, but it's not solving the problem. You got to go after the core. So typically what's happening, and superintendents and growers have probably noticed it, year over year, it's just not working as good as it used to. That's because we're relying on these old test methods and these old methods instead of looking at the new. So vegetation struggles, the soil start holding water, we can't get water down. We complain about our water quality, which, granted, you have to if you don't have medicine for it. And it's not great, but, you're the one to blame because you're the one responsible for it. Costs are escalating. The price of fertilizers and stuff are through the roof. The cost of fuel's through the roof. And then budgets and revenues are impacted. And so, maybe the golf course is, your number one revenue. And if it's not really nice to play, you probably don't get as much play as you'd like. Same thing in crop growing. If you can't get that optimum production, then you're at a fixed cost. But if you increase those yields 20% for less money, I mean, that all falls directly to the bottom line. So what are these problems? I mean, there they are on the right: mineralization, accumulated nutrition, lack of infiltration, lack of pore space, the waste products and toxins that bio makes, and then the toxins, the sodium and the bio waste. So the WaterSOLV program has really changed the thresholds of agronomy, and it's done by chemistry. It's done by biology. And that affects the physics, and it's all done through science, irrefutable science. And so everyone benefiting from the improved results, management, ownership, members, finance, they're all impressed because we're now seeing results. We're now seeing what we had hoped we could have accomplished. And the more money you spend in physical agronomy, the more you can achieve, but the cost to do that is through the roof. There's a better way. I'm going to show you that. So there's significant added value and increased revenues, as I mentioned earlier. More crop production, vegetation vitality everywhere. Anything exposed to the water is going to be affected in a positive manner, from plugged emitters to sprinklers sticking on, to sprinklers not coming on, to plugged filters. All of these things are impacted. So some of the highlights of those impacts is crop production. If you can imagine, we can increase crop production in agriculture 18 to as much as 70%. 18% on like nuts, garlic, onions, 70%, believe it or not, on strawberries and blueberries, um, simply by making the water and the soil and the available nutrition a better product. Um, Usually the water savings is a minimum of 15%. We've had people report to us as much as 40%. A/B testing. They had 2 golf courses on, 2 golf courses not on the program, and they were 40% reduction in water demand, and the other 2 courses actually exceeded their water budget. The money, the cost of our program usually pays for itself, and we've had reports. Most everybody will say it doubles the amount of revenue that the whole program costs them, the equipment and the chemistry. And we have a guy on video saying it's more like 15-fold for him. So it's significant. And then the resources that you have to have. The amount of resources that go into aerification, top dressing, compaction removal, sod replacement, all of these different things, the amount of water that you have to use, et cetera, they all add up. And so we're changing that. Have we mentioned the line cleaning, dealing with bryozoa, dealing with shells? We did mention those. Those are all real things, and we get a lot of customers from that. And it's all, making challenging water and soils valuable. Give them the medicine they need, get them well, and all of these things will be visual, and then analytically we'll be able to show it to you. So, believability is a big thing, and I remember watching, in 1956 when I was born. That's not when I remember, but probably in the 60s, I remember, Dick Tracy, and he had this, what is it, a two-way wrist TV, and it was like, wow, it was interesting. But, here we are in 2015, 69 years later, and we have it. It's here. Okay. Well, what else has changed that was pretty significant? Well, we went from fax to email. In 64, the fax, got pretty prominent. And then in 71, email came about, no more paper and toner, thermal, printers. In 1981, the first computer notebook really got mainstream. In 1985, Windows was invented, Microsoft Windows. In 2006, the cloud was invented or created. In 2010, the iPad was created. That's not long ago. And in 2014, WaterSOLV was created. It goes back a long time before that, but 2014 for what we do, here we are. And then in 2022, we developed the WaterSOLV program, and we'll explain the details of that program. So this is a picture we received this year. We could only get 30% the number of strawberries in the box. And it was a problem. And it was a problem because they had to find 70% more boxes. They need to get this stuff to harvest. This is all caused by nutritional availability and nutritional uptake by the plant. Okay, and uptake it's always verified by tissue analyses, sap analyses, bee crop analyses, etc. But we don't do it by percentage, we do it by volume. Here's some other nice claims. After 4 years of using the WaterSOLV program, I just had to tell you, what we spent on chemigation equipment and chemistry was offset by our sod budget alone. Another one reported, just reducing one aerification and top dressing is enough savings to pay for the entire system and annual chemistry. And the last one we have there was estimated savings. I'd estimate our savings are 15 times what we spent on the equipment and annual chemistry. So the technology that we currently use for physical pore space, we've had a lot of places analyzed. The first one was out of Texas. And again, I'll read the statement to you. The restoration of infiltration, reduction of bulk density, increase of WaterSOLV BC resulted in the best greens ever realized. And that was done by what they call the International Sports Turf Research Center through an analytical analysis. Their statement was, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. These greens are near perfect, an example of what you should do on all your greens. In Arizona, After 4 years on the WaterSOLV program, 22-year-old greens, USGA sand-based, good as new, 22 years old. They've been on the WaterSOLV program 4 years, and that was done through ISTRIC analysis. So we're doing all of this with new, all-encompassing data. And what I mean by new is that we're not just looking at water, we're looking at all specific aspects of water, but also including water bacteria. We're looking at total soil properties, not what the industry has used for decades called exchangeables. We're looking at what that water with the bacteria going through the soil is producing for the plant to be able to drink through an improved method that gives us much more accurate data. And with this data, we know what we need to do to treat the water, the biology of the water. We know what we need to do to start moving accumulated nutrients and toxins out of the soil, through the soil, so that our plant, when it takes a drink, it gets the most amount of nutrients and the least amount of toxins. All the while, we're actually fixing soils because we're basically moving the accumulated nutrients and detoxifying the toxins of the soil so that they're not impacted when the plant consumes that water from that soil. The biology are really, really key factors because as they produce, which they can reproduce exponentially, what that means is that, if you have 10, in 15 to 20 minutes, you could have 100, and in 15 to 20 minutes, you could have 1,000. So that's that exponential growth. The problem is that when they do get destroyed, they leave behind matter. But the other problem is that they produce toxins. Their waste products are toxins. And by doing these tests, we're able to see how biomatter has tied up nutrients, usually the micronutrients and also phosphate. And so we know how biology is affecting the available nutrition due to its being locked up in the soils. And all of these things add up to physical soil properties. Bulk density, pore space, sodium absorption ratio, which we do not subscribe to, base saturation, which we do not subscribe to because they're not looking at the total soil, they're only looking at the exchangeables. And so those then impact our infiltration rate, our infiltration depth, the ability to get oxygen down into the existing root zone, the ability to liberate all the salts and toxins in the desired root zone as well as oxygen. And with this data, we've set baseline information, which we can track. We can see it, it's accountable, we can see the elements reduce, the pounds per acres reduce, the infiltration rates and depth change, and this is all visible and trackable. And then we can actually lay next year's information below each category in the next year's information, and so it's all accountable. And moreover, you'll be able to see the difference. Visually, you'll be able to see the water go down, you'll be able to see the vegetation vitality, you'll be able to see substantial increases in growth rates and health and the reduction of disease, etc. You'll also see this data in tissue analyses through volume, not percentage. So the new analytical test methods: water and bacteria, total soil digestion, and a matured available soil nutrition analysis. So what do we mean by matured? Well, matured is we're going to use your water. We might treat it for you. We might spike it with our material. You might provide us the treated water you're using. And then we're going to put that through your soil, but we're going to make a paste that's a 4-to-1 ratio of water to soil, not a 1-to-1 ratio of water to soil. And then we're going to let that chemical in that soil that's going to be mixed up into a paste. We're going to let it sit there and do its job for 72 hours, not 12 to 24 hours, 72 hours. I want to know what that water is releasing for the plant because I don't want to put more on if I already have it in the soil. What I want to do is make my water a better product, okay, so I don't have to add more on if I already have tons of it in the soil. And so what typically this matured available soil nutrition analysis tells us is, hey, we need to make the water better so we can move more out of the soil into available. And eventually that total soil digestion will tell us, hey, you kind of used all the phosphate you need to add it. Hey, you still need to use more of the antiseptic because we still have massive amounts of nitrogen built up in the soil. Hey, you need to use a little bit more of that acid because it's not releasing enough of the calcium and magnesium to offset the amount of sodium and get that sodium percentage down. And that's how it works. So the culprits, everyone's impacted significantly by some degree of these culprits. We have what we call calcareous, we have bio, we have toxicity, lack of oxygen, lack of nutritional uptake and volume. And it's all caused by a matrix of these components. Bicarbonate, it's going to tie up calcium and magnesium. So when you take water, dry it on the hood of your car in the sun, and you get scale, that scale is not drinkable. And if you add water to it, it doesn't go away. You need to acidify it. And what happened in our industry was we would acidify it, and the plant would drink some of it, but then what it didn't drink got left behind, became a denser crystal that the acid wouldn't break down, and so it built up in the soils. And that was a study done by UC Davis. All you have to do is go onto our website, type in UC Davis, and you can read the study. The evaporative salts of strong acids are not redissolved by strong acids. Hence, your soils have, if you use sulfurous acids, hence your soils have massive amounts of calcium, massive amounts of sulfur, and usually a black layer and water infiltration issue. The second thing that people don't really realize is chloride. Chloride ties up a lot of nutrients. It also harbors sodium, yet when you water, the sodium comes off. But sodium doesn't want to flush if chloride's there because it'll stick around. And chloride's the culprit. So chloride is a monster. We've got to disassociate those bonds of bicarbonate and chloride. Natural valence, calcium phosphate, potassium phosphate. That's the attraction between the plus and the minus. It's a natural attraction. It's like a magnet. And they like to be together. We have to fix that because we've got to be able to put these things into solution for the plant to drink. And then biomatter. It's not necessarily the bacteria that cause the problem. It's their waste product. It's what they produce. So when you smell that rotten egg smell, that's a waste product, hydrogen sulfide gas of anaerobic bacteria, sulfate-reducing bacteria, which we refer to as black layer. And that stuff will kill people. It also consumes oxygen. But it also leaves behind biomatter. So the matter of the bacteria can fill pore space as well. And pore space we've got to have. So pore space is hindered by the calcification, the complexing, the chloride, the biomatter. And if we don't have infiltration, then we can't get good water to where it needs to go. And then that adds up to bulk density, and that adds up to compaction. Unavailable nutrition is the root cause of several factors, and all lead to septic and anoxic soils that are oxygen deficient. Hence, our vegetation strives to survive. So remember, soils are a filter, and filters need to be cleaned. So this was a good experiment we did. We received a sample of probably some of the yuckiest water I had ever seen. And it had some sludge material in it. So we split it up. And so the first thing we did was we put it in a beaker with a little water and a whole bunch of our acid and let it sit for 3 or 4 days. And you can see in the first image it left behind matter. And so the second one, we added some of the material in sludge. We added water. We added a bunch of our antiseptic, WaterSOLV BC, and we let it sit there and do its job for 3 or 4 or 5 days, maybe 6. And you can see it left matter. And so the third one, with the same solution and sludge, we decided, all right, we're going to put in our WaterSOLV curative acid, and we're going to put in our BC. It looked like all of that became drinkable. It did. It all went into solution. It all went into EC and TDS. And why we worry about EC, a high level of EC or a high level of TDS is beyond me. Because if it's all soluble nutrition, then that's beneficial. But if it's all soluble sodium and toxins, then it's not. Okay? And so we don't, there's a bell curve to that. And there's a study on our website. I won't go too deep with you, but we can show you that when you're going to remediate a green, your EC should go up. But as you remediate them, then that EC will come down and you'll be able to maintain a lower EC. And your greens will be clean. So up on the upper left, that was a little 12-day test that we did trying to use our product super aggressively, massive amounts of our product to see if we could move black layer and not burn turf. And that's exactly what we did. That was over 12 days. Okay. On the right was it's up at Myrtle Beach, TPC, but also national. We looked at their data. We said, you really don't need to move salts. What you need to do is get rid of biology and bioexudates. And they sent us this picture. I think it was several months after they started using the product. They were so proud of how the product worked and the work that they did. And I think it looks spectacular. So this is a detailed sheet about the modes of operation of the chemistry. So I won't get into the full details. This is available to you. I'll blow over it. But so this key word is called sequester. Okay. So when we're treating water, what we're trying to do is make sure that all the elements in the water will stay soluble in the soil. They won't evaporate to dryness. They won't crystallize. And also detoxify sodium and then utilize the antiseptic if needed. But when we get to the soil, what we need to do is we need to have ionization power, not low pH, but ionization strength of an acid that's capable of breaking apart these crystals. So liberate the bicarbonate, liberate the chloride, liberate the valence, and then sequester these salts so that they stay as an available hydratable product for the plant to drink, as well as detoxify the sodium. And if we need to, then we need to add the antiseptic because typically our soils are septic. And so then all of that causes us to start watering to water. So we're not really watering to flush salts because that doesn't really work. We're watering to provide hydration so that we can hydrate these available nutrients so our plant can drink them. Okay. And so we get all these improved conditions, efficiencies, and vegetation vitality. We have the data, we have the nutrition, we have the detoxification, and then the physical agronomical practices aren't so necessary. When you are on this program and you go out and do a core aerification, you don't break tines. The probes go down like butter, butter in a microwave. They don't rattle, they don't vibrate you to death. They simply go down, they core aerify, etc. So the need to do that, the frequency to do that is greatly reduced. So we had our injectables, and a lot of people said, well, I want to blend up the injectables and I want to try it topically, which made a lot of sense. And so we came out with some topical products. It's not user friendly to take these concentrates, these injectables that we made, and blend them together. If you blend them together without water and don't use enough water, they'll violently react, and it's not a safe thing to do. And so we came out with Fix. Well, what is Fix? Fix is more like let's fix our soils that we know are a calcareous issue. So Fix has a lot of our concentrate acid in it, and it has a little bit of our antiseptic. Yet a lot of soils might be biologically compromised, where the acid isn't going to get through the biology. So we came out with the Grow. So the Grow is primarily the antiseptic, but it still has a little bit of the acid in it. And they complement each other because usually there's biology or calcification involved in both situations. And so these are the two products. So if I had a green that was kind of soggy, infiltration was really bad, I could get a probe in the ground. I would recommend the Grow product from that physical knowledge. If I couldn't get in a probe in the ground, then I would know it's more than likely a calcareous issue, and we would use the fixed product. The interesting thing about a biological product is you have to stay on it because you got a lot of biology there that you're going to go after. So you got to stay on it. The chemical's pretty much done in the first 3 or 4 days, so you got to get on it again. And as you keep doing it, you're reducing the amount of these colonies that are there. But the fix is really a linear relationship, pound for pound. You got a pound of calcareous, put on a pound of fix, and you're going to convert that pound of calcareous into nutrition. So it's not a growing problem like we say the biology is. So our injectables are super, super concentrated. So, take 2 totes of WaterSOLV curative. That's going to replace a full 5,400 gallons of sulfurous acid. It's going to replace 10,800 gallons of infuric, 2 totes of that product. So a typical golf course might use 1 to 2 totes a year. And, it's plug in and the pump distributes it. The BC product, we don't know how much you'd use because we don't know your conditions. But typically, a golf course might use 1 to 2 drums of that product a year. And these are injectables. They're as concentrated as they can be, so we don't ship water across the country. The curative is fuming. The fumes are not corrosion inhibited, so it needs to be a sealed product. We don't want fumes going through. And if we're getting some fumes, we simply put some sodium bicarbonate over the area it's fuming, and the sodium bicarbonate absorbs the fumes, and then we don't have any issues. And then this is the chemigation system that we had designed. What does it do? It reads flow. The computer tells based on where we set the feed rates what the pump needs to do. So we're not really dealing with the pump or dialing the pump. It's on 100%. We basically said we want to put out X gallons of this product per million gallons of water. We enter that into the computer, and then it sends signals to the pumps based on the flow rate. That's how much it's going to put out. So if we're running 500 GPM, or the jockey pump at 40 GPM, or we're running full bore, 2800 GPM, that pump is reading those signals saying, got to work harder, got to put in more. So it's a really, really great system. So what is process 1 of our program? Process 1 of our program is analytical data. It's like going to the doctor. He's going to check your blood pressure. He's going to check your blood. He's going to check your respiration. He's going to check your heartbeat. And that's what we're doing. We want to know, what are we dealing with water-wise? Maybe we're dealing with 3 waters and we get a blend or whatever. What are we dealing with water-wise? What are we putting on our soil? So what do we need to treat? Second one is, what's the condition of our soils? So the green's going to be different than the fairway. You could pretty much say that the greens would be a soil that we're going to look at, and fairways and tees and roughs is another soil we're going to look at. And then we want to see what our water, hopefully treated with our material, spiked with our material, is going to make, so that we can make sure we're making a beneficial, rewarding drink available for that plant to consume. And so there's the end user pricing for those tests. It's a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's a $1,200 investment, okay, to get all of this information. And then what we'll do is we'll take, we want to know site conditions. What are the sources of water? Let's give them the names. What's the acreage? What's the annual water usage? How many pump stations do we have? What are the objectives? What's the timing? With all of that information from this analytical spreadsheet, we can run all these numbers and provide that. And so while we're 10 to 14 days to get this data, it's only a few days to put it together and give you all the numbers that you want, that management wants, that the city wants, that everybody wants to know, so they can budget, understand what it is, etc. But what they also want to know, what I want them to know, is the savings. So the offsets, the savings, and the value, because they far outweigh the cost of the program. So process 2, we take these water retreatment requirements, we take the volume of chemistry and cost, the additional chemical needs and the amount of time to remediate the soils, what the annual chemistry needs would be thereon, what the chemigation needs would be, etc. And we basically put all that together in 1 to 2 days. And then we have a proposal. So the proposal is their water treatment needs, their soil remediation needs, ongoing sustainability costs, the equipment costs, installation costs of the equipment, annual maintenance and testing, and then the cost savings, offsets, and value. And we don't put those numbers in. We say, look, you're going to change this, you're going to change that, this isn't going to happen, you're going to be able to reduce this, reduce that. And they get to add in those numbers, and then they can compare that to what they're going to spend, and they'll see they're in the black. As far as product goes, why ship it to the warehouse? Why not just ship it directly to the customer? You're going to do one or two, a tote in a drum or two totes in a drum. Why not deliver it directly to them, put it in place, and plug in? That's the program. As far as the topicals, we recommend that you have topicals in stock. Let them evaluate it. Let them topically spray. And they'll see those results, and odds are they're going to want to buy into the whole injectable program. This is one of our first vineyards in California, and it was pretty amazing. $6,300 a product caused them an additional $1.2 million in additional revenue, and it was kind of shocking how it made them that much more revenue. They went from grade 3 to grade 1 grapes. Sorry about the spelling error. They went from 1,700 to 2,500 boxes of grapes per acre. It was just 100 acres. 2 clip bundles. So in harvesting, they were able to save money because they were 2 clip bundles instead of 4 and 5 clip bundles. And this harvester here said that these were the best grapes in that valley in 20 years. So our call to action for you is we can't expect our representation to understand the depths of our knowledge, but you have the relationship. You know your customers' problems. We're your partner. We'll help secure the cell. We'll help with soil testing. We'll help with the analytical data. We'll help with answering questions, overcome the believability, help with application rates for topical applications. Maybe they don't want to do the data, spend the money on the data. So, we could do like I said earlier. Well, tell me about what's going on. We can help them, help them explain to us what they see, help run them by, is there a confining layer, et cetera. In fact, we did that this morning of all things. We had a confining layer on his greens at 3 inches, and everything below was beautiful, but the 3 inch was killing them, and the 0 to 3 inch was super problematic. So it was real easy to do. Spent 15 minutes on the phone. He was getting ready to buy fix, and he changed the order. Now he's buying the grow. And then once the grow's working for him, he's going to be buying the fix because we got to get through that confining layer. And so we're here for you. So you have the relationship with the superintendent. They have the relationship with you. We're your partner to get these questions. And what do we get? We get results. And you become that trusted advisor, and we become that trusted advisor with you. And that's what it's all about. So here's another list of those problems we solve. It's a sheet that we have available to you. It's a great leave behind. Step 2, this is an image of our website analytical testing icons. And so it's kind of like going on Amazon and ordering your testing. You can choose your water bacteria, your available soil nutrition analysis, the total soil composition, and then the interpretations and recommendations. This is supported with documents that are on the website so that you can read about the testing methods. So what soil sample do I need? How should I take it? Where should I take it? How much soil do I need? How much water do I need for each test? Should I test each irrigation water? Should I test the bacteria in each irrigation water? Where do I get the water from? How do I get the water? All these various questions. And the art here is not only in the tests that we do and the data we get for them, but it's also how we take these samples. A good example would be a green that you're struggling with. And we had a deal just the other day when somebody said, their first 3 inches are anoxic, then they hit a confining layer, and then everything below that's great. And that might take, 2 different prescriptions, one to make that first tier of 3 inches healthy, and then change the chemistry to go after that confining layer. So we would actually want to get some of that confining layer to see the data, show us it's the accumulation of, complex calcareous salts and toxins, where the upper layer, based on how they described it, was, primarily anoxicity. They didn't have the collection of the calcareous salts, et cetera. And there's a reason for that, because anaerobic bacteria produces sulfurous acid. So, that it wouldn't build up there. And then, year over year, they're core aerifying at 3 inches. So then we fill those holes with the water and it settles down into that 3 inch layer. And over time, it just accumulates. In fact, these particular greens, they had the money and they were rebuilding them every 2 years. They were scraping and rebuilding the greens. So that confining layer was kind of evident that it was going to occur, and it probably got worse year over year over year. And so the way that we do this is a dealer can go on and make these purchases. He can apply the dealer discount so he gets his margin, or an end user can go on and do this at retail pricing. What they do is they put together the sample, they learn how to take the samples, how much of the samples, they box it up, they fill out a piece of paperwork, they send that to the lab then does all the work, sends us all the data, and then we put it into that legacy analytical log sheet, which becomes a ledger. So here's the data today, and maybe we look at it in 6 months or a year from now, we see how that soil's improving, how we're moving the salts. It's going to define whether we need to add nutrition and what nutrition we need to add, et cetera. So it's a really good program. It's initiated online. A lot of dealers can't book it online. They need us to bill them net 30, which we do. So step 3 is we take those interpretations and recommendations. We can review it with the client. We can show them the cost. We can provide the proposal, and that whole process takes us about 30 minutes. So we're not into this too long. Step 4 is usually they want to do a topical. So we got to make sure that they're using the right product and they're putting it out properly. So, the grow product, one of the things we need to tell them is, you need to do this consistent. You need to do it like every 4 or 5 days. We need to knock those things down. We need to, see if there's a confining layer, and when do we need to incorporate the fixed product versus the grow product. So pretty simple stuff. Step 4 is if they want to go all in. So if they want to buy the chemigation equipment and the pumps, get it installed and start making all their water healthy and beneficial. We're packaged goods. We're plug and play. Buy it, plug it in, and go about your business. We like to drop ship to end users. You don't need to warehouse, the injectables. We do recommend you warehouse the topicals. We do subscribe to agency pricing. We do, have a code of ethics between dealers. We don't want dealers taking business from dealers. There is a lot of crossover in the industry, so we try and, do our best to help manage that. Product usage, as I mentioned, typical golf course might use, a total curative, a drum of BC. We don't know until we see the data. Acreage and water volume is a key component to how much chemistry you're going to need. And then looking at, the soil and the water, and then, knowing how we need to treat it, then we can easily estimate the annual cost. We can also factor the water savings to reduce those costs. Comparing cost of product is, I had a rough time with it for a long time, but it's a pretty easy formula. And the reason I say that is, people might pay, $5 for a gallon of sulfuric acid, yet $30 for a gallon of our product. Well, our product, you're using it, 2 ppm, and the sulfuric you're using it 60 ppm. So which one's least expensive? It's called use cost. We're a heck of a lot less expensive, and then the fate of what you're going to get is much greater. So use cost is a really big deal, and we can share that with you if you want some assistance with that. And unaware of competitive programs that compete with us. I don't know of any. They come out with certain things like, well, we're going to oxygenate your water and add hydrogen peroxide to it. Sure, that adds value, but it's not the whole picture. So anyways, we look at all those things. We write papers on them, analytical testing. We review the intricate details of it, like PLFA testing for fungal populations. We reviewed that test and said, well, gosh, you're going to be counting the dead fungi as well. So, anyways, that's what we do. We have a lab. We go into the lab. We do our homework. We, review documentation, et cetera, and we, try to come out with scientific basis, and then do the empirical reproducible results. Lots of stuff on our website. Lots. HCTLLC.com. We've created about everything you could possibly think of to fill the gaps of believability. We have certified products by California Department of Food and Agriculture, by the National Sanitation Foundation on potable water systems. We have listed products with the National Organic Program, video testimonials, case studies, research papers, matured analytical testing that we've done all over the country, training and educational videos, science and chemistry videos. It's all at our website. So if someone calls and they're questioning this or want to know something about that, et cetera, we can send them a document we wrote, we can send them videos we wrote, we can send them the science behind it, the research behind it, et cetera. We can do all that really quick and easy. We're your technical and sales resource center. We'll help you and your clients. We can do webinars. We can do anything you want us to do. We're loaded. We have it. We're ready to go. And whether it's ownership, management company, members, we try and put things into an understandable form so that they can relate to it. And our close ratio is pretty cool. 98% of the people that engage with us wind up getting involved with us. So some things that I wanted to share with you about statistics. When you own it, the close ratio is through the roof, and it's really hard for our dealers to own this. It's deep. There's a lot of variables there. It takes a while, and it took me a lifetime. I'm 67 years old, and so I've got it down pat, and I'm your resource. So working with you and your customers, it starts to resonate, and then you see it, and you work with us, and we're answering the questions and providing these solutions to you, with you, through you. It's nice conversion. The analytical data, I don't expect you to explain it. We can explain it. It starts to make sense, and then next thing you know, you're explaining it. There's new revenues. There's revenue in the chemigation equipment. There's revenue in the analytical testing. Those are things that we feel that the end user should be paying for, especially the analytical, because they share it with everybody. I think that they should pay for it. It's their data, and it should be a revenue model for our dealers. I talked about our close ratio, and I brought up deleted items folder. If we emailed all the praise we get from our users, you wind up forwarding our newsletters to junk mail. The amount of positive comments that we get for what we do that we don't share is significant. And if we go out there and share all this and promote all this, it's like, yeah, right, I've heard all that snake oil and fairy dust before. But so anyways, we reserve a lot of that. So these are just some snippets from our website. We have some really detailed, in-depth presentations, audio, video presentations on our YouTube channel. So you don't have to look for us on YouTube. Just go to our website and click on the YouTube icon, and you can get to these different windows. And there's some really startling information that we've shared here, along with the educational videos. So if you want to learn what we do, you got to kind of watch this stuff 4 or 5 times over when you have some time, or listen to it from our YouTube channel while you're driving down the road. Probably plenty of road time, and it'll come together. But it's pretty heavy as we speak today. Some of these science videos that we put on, I mean, we did these because we were shocked at what we saw, and we had to share it with you. So hopefully you'll have a chance to, when you have time, you'll have a chance to take a look at these things. On our website, there's a search box and it works. So type in keywords like UC Space Davis or infiltration, or you can see down on the bottom left, we have all types of documents written that are titled like, chloride, shells, infiltration, soil testing, etc. So all of this is there for you. It's there for you, for us. We can right click, copy the link, send it to someone, take them right to it, etc. So it's all there. And there's more online. If you click into turf, you're going to see tiles like this: the products, the program, getting started, find a dealer, vetting WaterSOLV, case studies. All of these are there. At the bottom of each ag page and turf page and well page, there's all these images. A lot of times we'll share these images. It's relevant to what they're asking about. So we can share the document, share some images. It takes us seconds to do that for you. So all that's on our website. We are experts in analyzing water wells and writing prescriptions. So cities call us to give them recommendations on what they need to do to rehabilitate a water well. And it's kind of the same things that happen in agronomy. We still have scale, we still have biology, we still have anoxicity, we still have iron bacteria, but we have perforations, we have casing, we have volumes, et cetera, et cetera. So, our well clean process is about rehabilitating the well. Sometimes it's about remediating the well, recovering a well, the maintenance of wells. We get involved in E. coli and coliform issues. Places where they've gone in and rehabbed it, but it never got rid of the E. coli and coliforms. A lot of wells aren't scaled. Most wells are colonized by bacteria, and yet we throw descaler down there or an acid to try and fix the well when it's all biology. We deal with both potable and non-potable wells. We've actually recovered wells for golf courses where the well company came in, they killed it, wanted to drill a new well, and they came to us and says, "What do you think?" Well, we do our homework, and the well came back to better than when it was brand new. So that's what we do. This is just a snapshot of our process. So step 1 is the data, step 2 is the prescription, step 3 is water treatment, soil remediation, step 4 is the ongoing treatment, and then the next step is manage and monitor. And then these are the products. So the legacy testing, the WaterSOLV Fix and Grow for topical, and then the curative and BC for injectable, and then the FS1 for the chemigation equipment. So I mentioned before that rain does not flush salts. Here's a little bit about tissue analyses. It's about volume of uptake, not percentage. There's things about soil surfaces, thatch, anoxicity, crust, and biolayer. There's root zones for existing, desired, and confining layers. Soils uniquely. You got greens, fairways. You have upper soil, lower soil. Hills, slopes, collection areas, calcified or anoxicity. These are all the standard things that we look at. But when you look at them all, it gives you answers. And then soil tiers, area of sample taken, was the sample from 2 inches, 0 to 4 inches? Was it a full foot of soil? All of these things add up so that we can, take this data, write a prescription, patient gets well. Okay. Dealers can, if they book the analytical data online, they can use a dealer discount code, or we can bill them net 30. We're at the end of our presentation. We're extremely grateful for your attendance. We hope we brought a lot of value and knowledge to you. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions, feel welcome to reach out to us. We respond same day. Text, phone, email, it doesn't matter. We're pretty quick to respond. We've kind of built everything so that we could provide you information right away that's extremely relevant to what you're requesting. Engage us with your customer. We're your partner. You want to go over an analytical log sheet, there's no reason not to have you, your client, and us on the phone, and we'll walk through it with both of you and show you what's going on. Remember that, these legacy analytical log sheets are a ledger. So, I just looked at one for, in Texas that we'd looked at in 2019, we'd looked at in 2022, and they're still fighting the same fight, and I think they're finally ready to make a difference. So we're here for you. Thank you for attending. Be safe, look both ways, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.